In tonight's Dateline Defense, the future of Guantanamo. Last week, the Pentagon announced it transferred 2 detainees from Yemen to Ghana. They're the first of 17 transfers expected early this year. For more, I'm joined by Molly O'Toole, political reporter for Defense One. Molly, let's start with a quick overview. Who's left at the U.S. military detention facility in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba?
Just as of today, there was another transfer that was announced today. So there are 103 remaining. That's the total population that remains at Guantanamo. And there are about 44 that have been cleared for transfer. That is to be moved to other countries. They've been cleared by 6 national security agencies unanimously to be moved to other countries. Of those 103, about 60, a little over 60 remaining are from Yemen. That's the majority of the total come from Yemen, and they're the most difficult to move because of the security situation in Yemen. They can't return home, so the U.S. government needs to find partner countries that would be able to host them.
All right, let's get back to the math. The Obama administration, as you mentioned, wants to cut the number down from 103 detainees to 90 in the coming days. Explain why.
Well, they already have had announced that they had set transfers. Obviously, certain things could happen that they wouldn't go through, but there are planned transfers that will total about 17 between last week and also the coming days. So they already have found partner countries, and the logistics are sort of underway to move them. We've seen a few in the last couple weeks, and that getting it to 90 is key. It's not a golden number, so to speak, but what the administration wanted to do is get the number as low as possible. But one of their goals for early this year was, in terms of optics, to get it under 100. They think that that will make it more convincing for members of Congress to potentially work with them to change laws that would allow for transfers to the United States. Now, we're not talking that 90 would necessarily be moved to the United States, but once all of the detainees that have been cleared for transfer, with potentially a few more, once they've been moved to third-party countries, that would leave around 40, approximately 40, that could potentially be moved to a secure facility in the United States.
Molly, as we've all come to realize, Guantanamo is a political lightning rod. Some conservatives argue when they're released from U.S. custody, these detainees pick up where they left off, namely returning to terrorism. Is there any evidence to back up those claims?
Well, there's some, but it's often overblown, and there's a little bit of sort of cherry-picking statistics in order to fit your argument, whether you're for closing Guantanamo or opposed to closing Guantanamo. But the Director of National Intelligence puts out a report on this, and what they found is that under those released under the Bush administration, which is a far more significant number, it's about 532 people, it's around 30% that are suspected or confirmed of re-engaging in terrorist activity. So 30% of 532. We often hear this 30% number cited, but it should be noted that of those released under the Obama administration, and they number around 120, I think just over that at this point, it's about 10% total, just under, that have been suspected or confirmed of re-engaging in terrorist activity. So that's the evidence that the Director of National Intelligence has produced for re-engagement, and then you sort of have to weigh the costs and benefits of any potential security risk you believe keeping the facility open might pose, which is part of the Obama administration's argument.
Now, as a candidate, President Obama promised to close Guantanamo. Tomorrow, he delivers his final State of the Union address. Do you think he'll bring this up?
I do think he'll bring this up. I mean, the administration has said this isn't going to be a typical State of the Union address. He's going to take the sort of 30,000-foot view, focus very much on what he's accomplished, what he has left to accomplish, but get sort of big picture. And while Guantanamo is a very specific, high-priority goal for the Obama administration, it also represents something for the president. It's an adamant personal belief that it goes against American values to hold people off U.S. soil without charging them with a crime, potentially indefinitely. So I do think that we'll certainly hear him mention this tomorrow, and how he sees it impacting perception of American values in the world.
Molly, can Obama realize that goal in his final year in office, or are there too many hurdles standing in his way?
Well, the law is pretty clear on this, and the president, despite vetoing the annual defense authorization bill the first time around, he did sign it into law toward the end of last year, and there are several obstacles that puts up for him closing the prison, most significantly that it continues to prevent the transfer of any detainees to U.S. soil. And most people agree that there would be a small number, the so-called worst of the worst, that wouldn't be able to be moved to other countries. They would need to be moved to the U.S. So long as that law exists, he won't be able to do that. Then the question remains, can he take executive action to close the facility if he can't work with Congress to change that law? And I don't believe that he'll be able to work with Congress to change that law. So the question becomes, can he take executive action? But even if he could, there are certain steps logistically that he would have to take to modify facilities in the U.S. That make it very difficult to see how he would be able to completely empty out Guantanamo, shutter the doors in this next year.
It's going to be an interesting time, particularly as he tries to polish up his legacy. There's so many things that are out of his control, national security being a major issue that could create major obstacles for the White House this year, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Molly O'Toole, political reporter for Defense One. Thanks, Molly.
Thanks.